Well, I suppose we better get this meeting started. Call to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we'll start with approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting, September 28th. Everybody had a chance to take a look at them. Any corrections, additions, subtractions?
Greg, I would question just the wording on the presentation for the trap shooting. It was, let's see here. All students on the team would participate in a 5-week spring league and they would qualify for athletic letters and compete at a state competition. The athletic letters is determined by the school district, so I guess I would question that statement because that hasn't been discussed yet.
Right.
The other thing,
It says they could qualify, because that was one of the things we discussed. It doesn't say there aren't. Am I reading that correct?
that says they could qualify for
Could
athletic,
qualify.
and we haven't discussed that yet.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Should we strike that sentence then?
well, I just want to make sure people understand it hasn't been discussed yet. So if somebody was here under the premise that that's already been approved, it hasn't. You guys got to discuss that. And I'm sure there would be some input on that.
Okay, so how do we
Just don't want
to
somebody
handle it?
misled.
I think Mr. Weathers just stated that that was a possibility.
Okay, so now we're into interpreting what Mr. Weathers said by the
No,
school clerk.
No, not at all. He said that the school districts, other school districts do that.
Okay.
And so that's why it was added in there.
Okay.
Well,
So we can adjust that if you want.
Just don't want somebody misled, Dave, because it hasn't been approved yet.
No intention of doing that.
Read it either way.
yeah. Well, the note's been made here then.
Yep.
Is there any other thing on it, Brad, that you?
No, that was just the one. I just didn't want somebody being misled that it was already approved for letters because
Okay.
it hasn't.
All right.
I'd like to correct misspelling and roll and Mr. Gillis' name there. I think there's another L, right?
2 L's in Gillis.
And roll with R-O-L-L.
All right. Well, then I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move.
I'll second. It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the regular board meeting September 28th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And then we'll move on to the approval of the general fund vouchers, 72,692 through 72,749. Wire transfers, 151,60087 through 151,60107. And activity fund vouchers, 2196 through 2216.
We reviewed, it appeared everything's in order.
I'll take that as a
I will so
motion.
move.
I will second.
Been properly moved and seconded that we approve the general fund vouchers. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And then we'll move on to the public comment questions. And it appears we've got two people that would like to speak. Nick Crawford, come forth, my friend.
Clear Lake School Board. My name is Nick Crawford, and I'm a social studies teacher here at Clear Lake High School. Although many staff members wanted to be here at the school board meeting tonight, due to parent-teacher conferences in the gym, we are unable to do so. We are concerned with new business agenda items C and D, and the potentially dangerous invasion of our privacy that these agenda items support. We are worried that our confidential information will be compromised if the school board goes forward with this action. This potentially dangerous invasion of our privacy is unnecessary, and personal information such as W-2 forms, bank account numbers, bank account routing numbers, spousal support payments, child support payments, college transcripts, workers' compensation, performance reviews, personnel files, resumes, reference letters, health savings account payments, retirement account payments, and social security numbers would all be accessible to school board members. This list is by no means exhaustive. Not only will this information be available about district employees, but much of the same information of our spouses would also be available to the school board simply because they share a banking account with an employee of this school district. We find this invasion of our privacy unacceptable. It has been suggested that allowing this access would help our district's financial audit. On August 15th, the auditing firm Baker Tilly Virchow Krause LLP concluded, quote, with the highest level of assurance that the district's financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles, unquote. There was no money unaccounted for in the district's finances. This exemplary audit proves there is no reason to allow such unprecedented access to private information. We see no value and believe illegal to have individual access to such personal and private information. We see this as unconscionable and unnecessary. The good news is that you, the school board as a whole, have the opportunity to end this. We urge you to stop this potentially dangerous invasion of our privacy before it begins. Stop this tonight. What's right is right, but new business agenda items C and D are wrong. Sincerely, 55 concerned Clear Lake School District employees. And I have signatures here from 55 different employees who are concerned about this and these agenda items. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nick. Gary Hansen.
Gentlemen of the board, as a taxpayer of Clear Lake area for the past 30 years, I'm expressing my concern of the direction of the Board of Education is taking. For the past 30 years, I haven't had any reason to express any concern regarding how the board was handling the affairs of the school. One concern is the necessity of the need of school board members to have access to private and school accounts. Micromanaging seems to be the goal of certain members. Past boards have hired quality people to perform the task of taking care of the business of running a school. We have a great school system with great employees, and they are producing great individuals in our students. The actions of the board, or at least some members, have had a detrimental effect on the school system. As a taxpayer, I'm concerned that this is not a healthy situation for the future of the school district of Clear Lake. After the last election, there was a statement brought up by a school board member that the public wanted a change. Listen to your constituents. This is not the change we want. As an employee of the district, I am concerned about the vital records that being jeopardized for no reason. When I was hired, I wondered how working with the staff and many hundred children was going to be. I quickly found the staff to be great to work with, and the students were good students, with them being very respectful. These are qualities this district has, great qualities. Creating a hostile and detrimental environment will only erode this. So I ask the board to do what's right to maintain all the good we have going for us in the Clear Lake community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. And that's all we have for public comment and questions. So we'll move on then to old business. A, construction update.
Okay, as we kept saying, eventually we're going to have a sign installed at the elementary. It was installed that week after the last board meeting, and I believe looks very well. I don't know how to ask Mr. Peterson.
Looks great. Very happy with it.
And so the construction update, you will no longer see on the agenda.
Okay, then we'll move on to old business B, update of superintendent's search. Looking at the calendar, nothing really has transpired except October 16th. The application deadline is fast approaching, And then October 22nd, the review of the applications and choosing of the interviewees is going to take place. Brad told me earlier that we've got 10 inquiries at this point. Does anybody have anything else to add?
You've got those to hand out, Greg. Yeah, those booklets. Lori, did Mr. Fagan drop those off or ship them to you? Came in the mail. What you've got is a booklet for the each board member, developed by the WASB, Mr. Fagan, who's running the search, and it's an information document for you with the committees that they interviewed, their feedback, with the screener that was on the website. The information is in there. He would ask that you take a look at it and bring it to your next meeting.
I take it this is the stage 2 informational?
This is stage 2
Posting?
informational, yep.
Okay. Looks good. Then we'll move on to old business. Item C, consideration of trap shooting club.
Okay. In your packet here, if you go right behind the financials, and Nicole is here, so Nicole, what we have is the target shooting plans that you sent me with the advisor's name and so forth. You want to speak to it at all, or Mark? I see Mark here.
Well, I guess if there's any questions that anybody has, I'd be willing to try to answer for you at this time.
Okay.
You talk about training, and we're setting up a club we want to give, but there's not a lot of rules or not a lot of guidelines for the kids that, so like if my kid wanted to be in the trap shooting range, I have no idea what they're doing or what the rules are. Do you have, is that coming in your training in January? Is that kind of?
Training, and the club has, you go online, has set rules right online.
Mm-hmm.
That states to you
And
what
so,
those rules are.
so you would be following those rules?
Yes.
Okay.
And they're pretty standard to the shooting world.
I just kind of wanted to get it on record and stuff like that, so.
Anybody have any other questions or concerns?
Yep, I've got a couple. First of all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th paragraph talks about the financial account through our business office, and I just want to explain, because I know that was a question. When Nicole had contacted me, all of our clubs set up that we recognize as school clubs have a financial account through the school system. And the reason for that is all of our accounts are audited. All the clubs, including clubs or groups that go under the auspices of the school district. And so it was recommended that you have an activity account for the trap shooting club. Now, that doesn't mean that we want to be involved in collecting fees for the shooting range or any individual things like that. If there was any fundraising done, collecting of money from kids for, like I say, whatever, but to pay for their direct fees to the state association or to the, we don't want to be involved in that. Don't get that wrong. It's just that if there was actual fundraising done for the club and you're going to help offset some costs, things like that, for the students, that would have to be audited.
You mean if we have a fundraising specifically for the trap team? Is that what you're saying?
If the kids do the fundraising,
Yep.
under the auspices that this is for the trap club,
Yep.
that would have to be.
Okay.
Okay? Now, if the Richardson Sportsman's Club does a fundraiser to help support,
We do quite a few of them a year, so I don't see that being, and if we do.
yeah, if the kids actually sold stuff though, Mark,
Yeah.
that's what that's for.
I don't
So again, we don't want to be involved in the everyday operations and the taking in
I don't
money
see us
and,
trying to raise money for it because we're going to do that on our.
okay. And if it's not used, it's not used. It's just,
We just still have to have it.
yeah, it would be there.
Okay, so it'll be set up so if we need it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to, I mean, the only time you would really have to is if kids are involved in fundraising. We have other clubs that work our concession stand. And at the end of the year, all the groups that work the concession stands split it up evenly, and so that money's put into their activity account. So that's where that would come into play. Like I say, if the Richardson Sportsman's Club does something, that's theirs. And so, okay. The other thing on your sheet, meet to shoot. At this time, a day has not been set to shoot until the club is approved by the school board. Parent students are able to meet and decide on a day. Will not have a certain day set. A day would be determined by parents, students closer to spring before the league starts. Again, I bring that one up. As a school district, we have a relationship with our local ministerial association. We don't run activities on Wednesday evenings. We don't run activities on Sunday evenings. We agreed a couple years ago to, with the ministerial association, to allow us to run open gyms, or if we're going to have practices because we have a Monday contest or a Tuesday contest, to allow the athletes to compete or practice from 3 to 5 o'clock, only if they don't have some kind of church activity to attend. And we need to stress that to the students. I realize that's easier said than done, but we still want to be able to maintain that relationship with our ministerial association. So if it's a club recognized by the school, we'd have to stay away from those 2 evenings. And the final thing would be we do have the 3 sports in the springtime: golf, baseball, softball, track, and so for each boys and girls. And so I would prefer not to run it right after school at 3:30 or 4 o'clock. So
This is only like 1 hour a week.
Yep.
That's,
I understand that.
But don't they have open gym for basketball players and stuff on Sunday?
From 3 to 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, and that's the agreement we came to with the ministerial. Before, we didn't used to have any, but like I say, about 2 years ago, we met with the ministerial association, and they agreed to start letting us do that at least. So,
Well, whatever the school has agreed with on that, we'll abide by.
Okay.
We have no problem with it.
okay,
We want to abide by all your rules, your athletic code, everything
okay,
in that sort of manner.
okay. And then the last thing is, which I had commented on in the minutes, as of right now, we're not recognizing it as a sport to letter in. Because it's a club, we have other clubs, ski club, drama club, art club. Those people don't earn letters either. And so it's hard and I guess, again, if the board decides differently, it's hard for me to justify to that wrestler that comes out in November, practices all the way through February for 4 months, goes to I don't know how many Saturday competitions, and a person that goes trap shooting 5 times, and I do it myself, so, but 5 or 6 times, they both get a letter. I question that. And so I would question whether they would letter or not, and I did contact area schools, Elk Mound, Boyceville. They don't letter people. We've got some other area ones. I don't know what Amory does. I wasn't able to get an answer back, but that one too, I mean, we'd want to clarify also.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's up to discussion
Yeah.
with you guys.
I don't think that's something to hold it back.
No.
But I just, again, want that out there that as a school district, we didn't say we're going to letter them, because, yeah, I would have a problem when that, like I say, or a football player or basketball, take any sport, a kid that puts in that much more time to letter as compared to, and again, I'm not belittling the trap shooting. I do it myself, and but the amount of time and practice that goes into a wrestling season as opposed to a trap shooting 5 or 6 or 7 weeks would be, so just something to be aware of. And so the other thing for the board, right behind the notes from our local shooting club, I do have a sheet from EMC Insurance Companies. EMC is our district insurance, and I know it's the statement's been made or said that no cost to the school district. Insurance will be through the Clay Shooting Association with an accident insurance policy. I did contact EMC Insurance, and there is no extra charge, but understand that as a club, you're endorsing it, they will fall under our insurance policy. So if something happens, yeah, you have the first policy or the policy of the club and the Wisconsin Clay Target League, but sure as can be that because it's associated with the school, they will fall under your insurance. And so you got the things that the EMC insurance company, just for everybody here, clay target shooting events such as trap shooting leagues and tournaments are a part of many schools' activities offerings. While participation by schools in trap shooting events is not prohibited statutorily or by our insurance policies, EMC insurance companies does not endorse or condone them because of the issues surrounding guns on school property and the hazards they pose if not properly organized and supervised. If your school is considering trap shooting as part of your curriculum or extracurricular program, the following risk management recommendations are offered. 1, schools should maintain their zero tolerance policy for weapons and ammunition on school premises and in school vehicles, and I know our presenter the last time said that. Practice and events should not occur on school grounds. They should be held at an independent gun club or approved shooting range, which we're talking about. School vehicles should not be used to transport student weapons or ammunition to practices or events. So in other words, to say we're going to give one of the school vans to go, we can't do that. Weapons should not be brought onto school premises, even if cased and locked in vehicles. 2, students should furnish their own weapons and ammunition. Schools should not purchase or supply either item. I got to chuckle about that one. 3, schools should not sponsor or attempt to exert control over off-premise competitions or practices. And again, that one, I just bring in that if it's going to be recognized as a school club, I wouldn't want to interfere with our relationship with the Ministerial Association. All students should provide proof of passing a hunter safety course prior to participation, and that's one of the, I know, the recommendations that the group is talking about. And 5, all student permission slips describing the activities and containing hold harmless wording should be developed. No student should be allowed to participate without parent or guardian permission. Any document developed for this purpose should be reviewed and approved by the school district legal counsel. So that's from our insurance company. Questions with that?
Brent, the concern that you had, would you need to see that before you would endorse?
I would, you know, I'm all for the club. I think it's, you know, I enjoy trap shooting too. We're approving a club that we don't know what it is. Because if we're going to approve it, we've got to get it into we'll have to approve something. So I guess, I think we just need to, if the bylaws are what you're going to do, get them to us and let us review them and let us approve them.
Everything's right online.
But we have to have it here at the school, is my understanding. If we're going to approve a club, you know, we need to have something printed here. So tomorrow, if the online changes, these are the rules we're going to follow, not what changes. So,
Do we have that for ski club?
I don't know. That's my only concern.
If it's a
Yeah,
club,
what do other clubs, have they put together before approval?
They've put together, okay, who their president is, their account, the participants, who's eligible, basically the things that are here that we've asked for.
Okay, so you're pretty confident that what we have here is what we need?
Well,
Or what else is missing?
I guess I'm on the same page as Brent is, okay, the bylaws are, I mean, again, that's not,
Or maybe we just simply state that the bylaws are located here on this website, and we list it.
that's up to you guys.
You know,
ask me what's your question? The rules in the club, or?
what's the rules? What's the eligibility rules for the club? What's the scoring? You know what you know.
The eligibility, I thought we would discuss that, because I'd like them to follow our,
Right, and
Our
then
policy.
they've got notes in there and things
Yeah.
like that. But
for the grades and all that kind of stuff.
and I guess just the nuts and bolts of who, you know, who's responsible and how it's the exact nuts and bolts of how it's set up.
But I thought this
Yeah, I mean, it's, a lot of it's there, but it just seems a little, I don't know.
I guess I don't
If I
understand.
were a parent that my kid was signing up and I said, okay, so what's the rules of the trap range?
So what you're asking the
What's
guys
the-
there is, okay, before you pull the trigger, what's the game?
What's the game? How are we doing it? What is my kid signing up for?
And I know that, like with Troy Weathers, he
Yeah.
is actually, I mean, if this does get approved,
Yeah,
when it does, if it does, he's actually going to come right to the school or right, you know, somewhere and meet with any parent, all the parents, everybody that needs to,
Mhm.
you know, and the kids, obviously, and discuss everything, go over everything that needs to be discussed and tell them exactly how it works, what's gonna happen, what's not gonna happen. You know, like that's his intentions. He just had another meeting.
no, I get it, and it's, this
Are
is
you
just,
looking more for a formal charter with the written bylaws? Or you
just the
looking for
the bylaws you talked about, they're online. I'd love to have them so we can approve them.
Well, I could have done that for you.
Yeah, you know, I thought that's what we were gonna get,
We
so,
can get that for you.
yeah.
I have no problem
And
getting
I,
that for you.
and I, you know, if the other members want to approve it pending that or something like that, you know, I don't have a problem with it, but I'm trying to think of Mrs. Smith down 3 years from now. What are we signing up for?
I'm not disagreeing
Yeah.
with you, but.
And to protect you too, because this is what
No,
we're doing.
Absolutely, I'm not
Yeah,
saying that, but we could get you that information.
perfect, yeah.
I mean,
Because it's a good outline. I mean, I understand, I get it because I was here for the presentation. So I just thought maybe just a
No
thorough,
problem.
just if it's online, let's print it off, let's approve that.
And, you know, one other concern, of course, would be safety. Here we're playing with guns and not skis. So my question would be, what kind of training, you know?
for one, they have to have hunter safety.
Right.
They have to have a certificate, they've had that training, okay?
Yeah,
That's already been in there, they've already had that training. Second off, they'll get it again when they join, because there'll be safety rules and there'll be a safety ranger there while shooting. And there's specific rules as they shoot and move, so, it's very safety oriented. So, it's just reestablished to the kids as we move on. And as part of their training too, you know, just like practice for football or whatever. It'd be always brought up safety number one, always.
and I guess the only other thing that I thought of when I was reading this is, was we're gonna have coaches or 10 to 1, or I can't remember the ratio. If that-
One coach to everything.
Yeah, so how do we, you know, and I don't know, maybe we don't need to do it, but do we need to have a list of coaches, or, you know, as we set this up?
I believe we've given you names, didn't we give
Yeah.
names?
Did that answer your question, if they follow the Wisconsin Clay Shooting Association rules and regulations? Did that,
Well, these are the folks that are gonna train them.
right,
Yeah.
but it's under rules and regulations, so the coaches will learn it, but I'm assuming that the shooters are gonna follow the places, the rules and regs of Wisconsin.
Right, yeah.
So
Okay.
that kind of spells it out, doesn't it?
I don't have them, so I just wanted to
Okay,
ask the question,
fair enough.
because I'd like to see it go.
Mhm.
I just, you know, I don't want to have something, I'm always the guy who says, what if? And I don't want to
Okay.
have a what if.
So what you're asking for is you'd like a copy of the rules and regulations from that Wisconsin Clay Shooting
Well, what
Association?
what exactly are we going to do? You know, and I think you're going to print them off and provide them to us, and I don't have a problem,
So you're telling us that's what we're following right now,
Yes.
Mark? Is that's what we're doing?
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay.
And then just, you know, and then just how you you get your names of your advisors.
Which I
And-
believe you already have some of those.
Yeah,
names.
they're listed there, and just what are their responsibilities, and, you know, what happens if one of them doesn't show up one night? Do their kids get to shoot?
I think
You know,
that's
that
why
kind
the
of
club,
thing.
actually, when I went to the meeting on Thursday,
Yeah.
they actually have, I think there's close to 6 guys now that are gonna go take the actual coaching class.
Mhm.
So
So
if somebody
that means
doesn't
we
show
can count
up.
60, we can count 60 kids at once.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to brainstorm here, because I don't want to have, 12 kids show up and you got two advisors, and then some,
And if one of us can't make it, we have 4 other guys that can
Perfect.
come in there.
Perfect.
With those names that are on there already,
Yep.
so,
Yeah.
with probably more coming.
No?
So, excuse me, Gary, I got one more question. And the club, you guys are gonna abide by our athletic code?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
so the
that's
kids have to
what-
keep up their grades, be
Absolutely.
good citizens, okay. Yep, and no alcohol,
No alcohol.
so, okay.
Anything else?
Any other questions or concerns or anything?
Nicole or Mark, what's the timeline as far as when you'd ideally start registration and then go from there?
I guess we kind of like to try to get a head count, for sure, certain kids in the next few months,
Mhm.
for sure. I mean, it starts in spring.
Right.
That way, we can line up all the coaches to go, they have to go in January,
Mhm.
so.
Okay.
And if we do get a chance and it's approved, we'll probably have a day scheduled that we can agree upon, that the kids and parents can come to the club, take a look, and all that. See if they're, some kids might be interested in the next time, I don't know, for me.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Okay, so, the things that we've talked about then thus far, your concern, Brent's been addressed. The lettering, do we need to figure that out now?
No.
Whether or not we want to?
Well, I think currently, since there are no other clubs, and that maybe is a bigger question, in the future, if that's something, but I think if this is going to be a club like other clubs, we stick with that same setup.
Be consistent.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, if you guys are
Club
in,
awards or whatever.
okay, so if you guys are all saying the same thing, then we'll scratch the lettering part of it. The days that we want to hold for the ministry, for the church times, Sundays and Wednesdays, you guys can work around that as well.
So it wouldn't be able to happen on a Sunday evening, just like, at all? I mean,
No.
it's total-
Well, again, that's if the board wants to change, but we do
You
have,
said you have open gym on what?
from 3 to 5 o'clock on
On
Sundays.
So you didn't know we could do that on a Sunday?
That's what I mean, is if it's something on a Sunday afternoon from that time.
I mean, if that's something that works for all the parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to go from, say, 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, we don't have a written agreement, but I can tell you, we just met with the Ministerial Association, we review it every year.
We'll definitely work around those guys.
And I wouldn't want to go back on any word that we,
Well, and if I remember correctly, when we opened up open gym on Sundays, that wasn't for the basketball players per se, that was
It was
for the
families.
for the families to come in and spend a
yeah.
Sunday.
yeah. It's not to schedule practices, it's to, but we did say this year, we asked if a team had a tournament on Monday or a game on Monday, if they could hold practice at that time, and the answer was yes. But again, make sure you notify the kids if you have a family outing or a church-related item to go to that first. You're excused from practice, and that's for all sports, so.
So we're clear, so then 3 to 5 on Sunday would be okay then, to kind of following the same?
That's,
rationale?
again,
It's up to us.
up to you guys. We allow an open gym during that time. And so, I guess, I'll ask Mark and Nicole, does Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening work? The Saturday afternoon from 3 to 5 o'clock, or?
We're open to, we're gonna try to work around the kids' schedule as
Yeah.
best we can, and the spring sports,
Yep,
because I want them to be involved in school activities also, but this is something that,
yeah.
they can
Yep.
actually do.
And so that's why I throw out the Saturday day is,
Yep.
if it's a possibility, then we're away from the churches on Sunday, and then I know we have some baseball tournaments on Saturday morning, so if it was a Saturday, again, how many kids would that affect, we don't know, but probably the least effect, or conflict, I should say, not effect, conflict, probably would be a Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening. So I'm just throwing that out there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there's a lot of flexibility because you're just deciding it. You don't have to schedule with another team or any
No,
of, so,
They shoot at the club.
yeah,
They shoot themselves there. We record the scores.
right.
We ain't shooting head to head against anybody. We're just.
So sitting down and figuring out times that work for people is,
This is the day
okay,
we're gonna shoot.
Perfect.
We just gotta stick to that date.
all right.
I have a question for Mark, maybe. Are you trying to have these guys shoot all together, or are they kind of work around their own schedule?
No, they gotta shoot together. They gotta shoot together.
So you're
Set
Sunday,
time, and that's-
you're saying Sunday afternoon, they would all have to be there?
It's easier to schedule for everybody that way. So yes, they have to shoot as a group.
Mr. Larson has a question. Mr. Larson.
Would there be a problem, like, I know that in the spring, well, all the way through the year, but we have various band concerts, choir concerts, activities like drama club, kind of things like that. I just would, if you have kids involved in that, are we gonna have problems with something? Again, I'm not objecting to your club at all. I think it's great, fabulous, go for it. But I don't want to have a kid come to me and say, well, I have to go shoot because everybody's shooting, so I'm sorry, I have to miss my band concert.
Do you have band concerts on Saturdays or Sundays?
No, we don't.
All right.
That's all I'm just saying, Mr. Ayers said, the least.
It wouldn't be a Monday through a Friday. We know that. We
Okay.
don't want to conflict with any other sport.
Yeah, we don't want conflict with any other sports.
If there was a conflict though, could the kids have a makeup time?
Yep, and the association allows for that also, so.
That was the other point I was gonna make about the shooting as a group. We have practices on Sundays, sometimes for wrestling, but we can't make it mandatory.
Right.
Yeah, so if they have a Sunday afternoon and say, hey, we're gonna shoot Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock, but it's not mandatory, if somebody can't make it, well, then we have a makeup day, and they can shoot on a whatever night where they can get an advisor there to watch them, and then have,
This, I remember this starts in March, so they're mid-March, and then we only shoot 5 weeks.
Right.
Yep.
And about roughly, depends how many kids we got, but it'll be roughly an hour or so, and we're done shooting.
Yeah, I think in answering Darren's question, though, somewhere between 3 and 5 o'clock,
Yes.
hold it, say, okay, start at 4, you're done at 5, or start at 3, and make it voluntary on a Sunday
And if
afternoon.
Something
That's,
happens that way, I think we can adjust our times if we need to, because we can always say, well, the club's being used at this time, we're gonna shoot at this time now.
okay.
So we can work from some of those.
Okay.
Okay. The activity account was addressed. I think we're probably ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion, we accept this as a club. And
I would just like to add one caveat, pending receipt of the rules. Okay, is that fair enough? Fair enough?
So just the bylaws, is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, yeah, the bylaws that you're pointing to, this is how we're gonna run it, this is what we're gonna do. Print them off and provide them to us as a school.
I know where you're going with that, but I don't know if we've got that for travel clubs, ski club. I mean, we've got a breakdown. So I'd be happy if you guys would provide us with the
If
rules.
they're willing to, I
Yep.
just wanna make sure that.
I wouldn't hinge it on it.
No, if something goofy was in there, but I don't expect it to be, but.
I'll second his motion.
All right. It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the trap shooting club. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Hats off to you
Have
guys who
fun.
put together a pretty good presentation and a good sound program, looks like so far, so.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing the fruits of it. Okay, now we'll move on to new business. Introduction of the new staff.
And the two that, Alicia Chelberg was a volleyball coach, and they had a C team scheduled tonight, or got a new one, and so she's not here. And Kim Torgerson, I don't believe, is here yet. Oh, Kim there is here. There she is, she's back. Kim, you want to just introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing for the district?
Sure, I'm Kim Torgerson. I'm the new SLP placing rows. So I graduated this May from UW Eau Claire. This is my first big girl job, I guess.
Speech and language, SLP.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry.
We use acronyms a lot. So, thank you, Kim.
Welcome aboard, Kim. All right, and then we'll move on to new business item B, auditor's report to date in response to material weakness.
Okay. We have with us Kim Schultz from Virgil Kraus, and Kim, as in your packet, you have right behind the trap shooting, you have pages that Kim is going to do her address from. So,
Is it okay if I stand here?
Sure.
Yep, you bet.
Okay. Thank you. I had hoped to have a draft of the 2015 financial statements. However, the district is required to implement a new accounting standard this year relating to pensions and your participation in the Wisconsin retirement system. And because of you're actually in the first wave of governments to implement that standard. June 30 year ends are the first ones. So it all hinges on getting information from WRS, getting the new note disclosures. There's going to be 4 or 5 pages of additional pension note disclosures, and those are now just becoming available. I actually just was notified earlier this week that those are available, so we weren't able to get through all that new standard processing and get it out, but we're close. Probably within a couple of weeks we'll have a draft. The report is due to the DPI December 1st, so we have plenty of time. There'll be no problems meeting that deadline. So just an update on how the audit process went. We are planning, and we will be issuing an unmodified opinion, which is a clean opinion. It's, again, the highest opinion we can give, saying that everything is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The audit process itself went very smoothly. No issues working with management or getting through any of the audit process. It was a pretty smooth process. We only found one very small audit adjustment, so kudos to Lori. It's very rare for an entity of your size to have no audit entries, so the fact that you had essentially one relatively minor one really says a lot for the work that Lori puts in and the quality of kind of the year-end numbers that she puts together. So. So since we don't have a draft to go over, I wanted to provide just some financial highlights, just to give you a sense of where you are with your financial position and some of the numbers. So I provided just a 2-page highlight document, and I'll just go over a few of the things on there. On the first page, the top half talks about the general fund and the fund balance that you have. That's probably the most important benchmark that we look at on a school district or really any government to try to get an idea of the financial health of the organization. So you'll see the total fund balance at the end of 2015 was about $1.3 million. And the best benchmark is to compare that to your annual expenditures, which are just over $6 million. So the ratio of your total fund balance to your total expenditures is almost 22%. So how that lines up from an industry kind of recommendation range, the Government Finance Officer Association, so the GFOA, which is the premier organization that provides financial information for governments, they recommend between 15% and 50%. So you're at about 22%, so you're towards the lower end of what they recommend for a fund balance, but you're still within kind of their standard recommendation. So I have a graph here of what that percentage has looked like over the last few years. You can see that is slightly trending down over the years. which indicates that you're using your fund balance as part of your annual budgeting process. So that's something, since you are on the lower end of that recommended range, just to watch that fund balance in the general fund. Probably don't want to erode that a lot more.
And the board knows, Kim, for the past 2 years, we've used fund balance to pay on our referendum debt, and that'll stop here after this next year, so.
Okay, yeah, you're still within what I would expect. So, and it's not uncommon for school districts to run pretty lean in the general fund. So, moving on to the next section on the first page, I have just some general fund summarized income statement information. Your total revenues are almost 6.8 million. Total expenditures of almost 6.9 million. You did have a net loss in the general fund of 85,595, which if you look at the second column, which is your budget, you did budget a much more significant use of your fund balance, a significant loss. So your actual results were better than what you had budgeted and anticipated. The last part on there is a summary of your cash and investment balance. Your total cash and investments at the end of 2015, just over 1.7 million. That's about 1.5 months worth of expenses that you have as cash on hand. So that's, again, probably a little bit on the lower end of what we would recommend, but still a nice cash balance at the end of the year. And you haven't had to do short-term borrowing and things like that to keep cash flow. So that's a good indicator. Okay. Onto the second page, I've listed the fund balances for your special revenue funds and your debt service funds. They're fairly stable. Your capital projects funds, in the middle of the page, you'll see the fund balance for 2015 is down significantly as you've been spending your bond proceeds. So that's totally expected with the projects you've had going on. There is a section here on your general long-term debt. One thing we look at is the level of your general obligation debt compared to your debt capacity, the debt that you're allowed to have by state statutes. You're currently at just over 70% of your debt limit. So that is, I think, a little on the higher side, which given your big projects, all your new borrowing related to that's not unexpected. Something likely your financial advisors, your bond consultants, have an eye on. So just information there. And then the other ratio we look at related to debt service is the very bottom number, which is your debt service expenditures to your total non-capital expenditures. And that number has been somewhat consistent, has been trending a little bit up again as you've been taking on more debt for projects. So not expected that would increase. So it's just a little snapshot of the results that you'll see when the draft financial statements are available. The other document that I have provided in draft is the communication to the governing body and management. This is the document that covers all of our required disclosures to the board. It provides just some general informational kind of topics as well. I'll just cover on page 1. Page 1 talks about the work that we do as part of the audit related to your internal controls. So we do not test your internal controls to the extent that we're issuing any sort of opinion on whether or not they're effective or not. We are looking at them on a very limited basis just to help us design the procedures and the extent of some of our procedures over different audit areas. So the requirements state, though, that as we're looking kind of at a limited basis at your controls, if we find something that looks deficient and it's something that could be significant, we are required to disclose that in writing. And so that's what this document is doing. So just to kind of go over a few of the terms that I'll be using. The third paragraph on page 1 defines what a material weakness is. So a material weakness is a deficiency that we find in your internal controls that there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement could occur in your financial records and not be either prevented or detected just in your normal course of business. So that's what that means. So we are, as we've disclosed in the past, we're disclosing 2 material weaknesses. The first one we're calling internal control environment, which is really a lack of segregation of duties. So as any small district or small entity, you don't often have enough people on staff to separate certain duties as they should be in an ideal world. The second one is internal control over financial reporting. That is essentially because we, as your auditors, draft the financial statement document. So if management or someone at the district is not drafting the financial statements, this comment is in here as material weakness. So just to put some perspective on these 2 items, the internal control over financial reporting, it's extremely common to have this as a material weakness. I am the partner in charge of about 45 governmental audits. I have, I believe, 2 where we don't have this as a material weakness, and those are my 2 largest governmental entities. Both of them have CPAs on staff, and they have the ability to draft their own financial statements without any significant issues. Also, there can't be any audit adjustments or any significant audit adjustments as well, which you typically don't have significant audit adjustments anyway. So again, with any district your size, with actually governments a lot larger than yours, typically we're reporting this as a material weakness. The internal control environment, which is a segregation of duties, again, that is extremely common. With an entity your size, it's very, very difficult to not have that as a comment, just because often there's essentially a cost benefit to, certainly you're not going to hire new staff to be able to separate duties or provide an additional check and balance. So again, that is something that is a routine comment. I, again, have very few clients that I work with that do not have lack of segregation of duties in some part of their system. Some of them have more parts of their accounting system that have issues, and some have just 1 or 2 areas in their system that aren't properly segregated. But again, I have very few clients that don't have that comment at all. And as far as what happens with these material weaknesses, so we are required to report these to you. What happens, or what the result of that is, your audit reports get submitted to DPI. And DPI does require essentially a response on those findings. So they will see what these are, and they'll read what your response is. And the response can be, this is what we're doing to address it, or it can be, this is why we can't address this, but this is what we're doing instead. Maybe in some cases you can't perfectly separate out duties, but there are other checks and balances in place. Someone's reviewing something. The board is reviewing disbursements. Somebody is looking at payroll reports. So, there are things that you can report to DPI that you are doing, even if you're not making the decision not to correct that, or you're not able to correct that. And then they will, they'll review that. If they don't feel it's adequate, they'll send out a letter and ask for clarification. But typically they accept those as long as the district, is being, prudent with having some checks and balances in place. Okay. So the next 2 pages, so that was all on page 1. Page 2 is the details related to the segregation of duty comment. And actually, you have just a few areas here that we're reporting as specific issues. On page 3, we talk a little more in detail about the internal control over financial reporting weakness as well, and what that would entail to clear up that material weakness. The rest of the letter consists of just some standard disclosures that we have to make to the board and some informational points about some upcoming standard changes. There's really not much that probably warrants too much discussion at this point unless anybody has questions on those. Starting on page 8, that is the part of the letter that we would disclose if we had any significant difficulties with the audit process or had any disagreements with management over accounting issues or anything of that nature. And happy to report we have not had anything of that nature at Clear Lake. So most of the letter is just standard disclosures. Any questions for me?
Our material weakness in our business office. We've had some questions as to what could we do as a school district to eliminate those.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the non-accountant.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Normally and I think it's really great that you're looking at these and trying to decide if there is a step you can take or a control that can be implemented. I think that is what you should be doing. Often we have comments that kind of roll over from year to year, and those are just accepted. So it is worth taking a look at and having a discussion, and we welcome that type of discussion. So specifically what you could do, looking at page 2, where we have kind of a list of the specific areas. I will say that how we normally see action being taken to fix these type of things, often the board will direct management. So I would say in this case the superintendent to develop a corrective action plan over whichever items you feel are priority to correct. At that point, then you could evaluate that and decide if that's adequate, and then the superintendent would implement and oversee that, and then it would be the board's responsibility to oversee that corrective action plan is being implemented and monitored. So that's normally the process that we see. So there are 3 items listed on page 2. It would be under controls over accounts payable and disbursements. It's that item. It's the 3rd item under controls over payroll, and the item under controls over period close. So those all relate to kind of the process that Lori goes through at the end of the year when she finalizes all the numbers, makes sure all the accounts are adjusted to the right balance. There's no one at this point that's taking a second look really at the details of that. And again, this is very common. Most districts have one bookkeeper and does a good job making sure everything is reconciled, and the audit proceeds from there. So I think what's happening here is no different than what is happening at other districts of your size. In order to eliminate these, somebody else would need to take a look at what Lori is doing prior to the audit, just to do a double check to make sure that the balances agree to the support, that the numbers look correct, and that would need to be documented so that we could see that process happened. In this case, I would say the superintendent would probably be in a good position to know the detailed ins and outs of the transactions of the district, to be able to scan a trial balance and look at numbers and see if anything jumps out or if anything is missing, if there's any monies owed or any bills that are expected to come in that maybe didn't get picked up in a balance. So that, I would say, would be how I would recommend correcting those. And that would be something that would be done only at year end. That's something, I would say larger organizations would maybe do some of that on a more monthly or quarterly basis, but probably for your purposes, I would say a year-end process would be adequate. Now the other 2 items that I didn't cover there are the items related to payroll. So the fact that Lori does basically everything related to payroll, and there's no, separation between adding employees, changing pay rates, making changes to any of the information that impacts your payroll. So that one, I think there are basically two ways that could be corrected that we see most commonly. The first would be to separate out the ability to actually run the payroll and cut the payroll checks from the individual that has access to make changes to pay rates, add employees, change deductions, things like that. Now, whether or not there is anyone on staff that could be worked with or trained to split those duties out, I'm not sure. Often there really isn't in many districts. So the second option would be to put in place what we would call compensating controls. So you always want to try to separate the access out if you possibly can. It's by far a better control to just separate out the duties. But if you can't, you have to fall back to, well, what else could you put in kind of on the back end to review information and to have that be a strong enough review process that it would catch any sort of errors or anything. So the two that we see most commonly, and I think if they're used together, they're very effective. The first would be most software packages will generate, it has different, I would say like a payroll change report. So you can run a report that says, okay, what changes were made to all my employee payroll information? And you can typically run that for a period of time, and it will tell you we added an employee, we terminated an employee, we changed a pay rate, we changed a deduction. It'll tell you what changes were made. And then if somebody, and I would recommend in this case the superintendent, just because you have limited people to kind of use in this check and balance, but certainly the person that looks at that should be familiar with all those changes and could review that report either on a per payroll basis or even on a monthly basis. And I would recommend that report be signed off, initial dated to document that was when it was done and that it was done timely, and that it was in fact reviewed. And I think it's even a better control if Brad, for example, would generate that report himself out of the payroll system and make sure the parameters are correct and things like that.
And then sign off on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really strong control, because any changes that are made automatically show up on that report and get a second approval. And you have an example.
Well, I talked to Kim last week about and so we investigated. Lori and I should say Lori did. Okay.
Give credit where
Is
credit's
that
due.
part? Yeah. Is that part of our Skyward ability? And yes, it is. So.
Okay.
That's.
Okay, and you can set the different parameters, it looks like. Okay, it looks like here you can exclude certain types of changes. So maybe if some are non-financial in nature, like if somebody has a change in address, I don't know if you care about that, you could uncheck that box. So good.
I have that ability.
So that would take care of bullet point number 2, which is, really there's no check and balance right now over either adding employees or changing pay rates or things of that nature. So that would be the first thing I would recommend putting in place. The second thing I would recommend putting in place is just a review of each pay register. So essentially each payroll should have a pay register that provides information on what the paychecks are, what the hours are for hourly employees, so you can have just another check over the payroll transactions. And again, I think just dealing with the people that you have to work with, that would certainly be something that would be a reasonable addition to the superintendent's kind of check and balance and review process. I think maybe probably there are certain things, if you're doing that you'd probably want to look for. I actually have a client that has a checklist of what they kind of look for when they review that. But again, to save that, to initial it and date it so that we can see that it's done timely and that it was in fact looked at. So, and I think those two things together, if they were done together and they were documented, the material weakness related to that would go away.
Very nice.
Yeah, I think if you're doing one of those, or they're both not documented adequately, we do have, so these are material weaknesses. There is one step down from that, which is called a significant deficiency. So that's less severe. So I think if we, were to find that maybe not everything was put in place, or if you came up with a little bit of a different corrective action plan, that would potentially be an option. But I think if you put both those controls in place and they were both documented, I think I would feel comfortable getting rid of the material weaknesses for those two payroll items. And I think the time involved with certainly reviewing that payroll change report should be just a few minutes once you figure out how to run the report and just get it generated. Maybe reviewing the detailed pay register may take a little bit more time, but I think once you kind of get used to the types of things you want to look at on that, and most of the stuff is pretty routine on there, that anything that looks unusual or looks like an error should jump out. So probably not a lot of time invested in something like that. So those would be the two controls that I would recommend, and the two that we normally see, smaller institutions and smaller schools put in place.
The other deficiencies basically talk about adding a whole other body to separate out some of the duties, and CPA like body, right? Like that level, not me, right?
Really, the places that don't have weaknesses for some of these things really do have. They have a full business
staff.
office.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have 5 accountants on the business office, it's pretty easy to get rid of some of these issues. When you're dealing with one bookkeeper, it's challenging to find somebody to review, the appropriate person to review too. Really, with the superintendent position, that really is kind of the right level of review, because still, would have direct knowledge of the transactions and of the information, but still, a level superior essentially. So, okay.
Controls over period close. Is that on a monthly? Like bank reconciliation?
I think bank reconciliations, Brad reviews bank reconciliations already. So I would say bank reconciliations are not, not the driver of this. It's all the other accounts. It's accounts payable, it's accrued payroll, it's receivable accounts, basically all the other items where Lori runs a report or figures out what the number should be and adjusts that on the general ledger. So to have a look and review of all the final balances. But most of those accounts could be just reviewed or double checked at year end as the audit process, or as you're getting ready for the audit process.
But then we do have a signature of them taking care that somebody is responsible, that they've looked over Lori's shoulder.
Yeah.
And
monthly, I
Yes.
do review every account.
Yeah.
But then we do have a signature backing that up.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we already have that, but it's
Is it documented now, Brett?
Yes.
Okay, so we sign off on that, but now we've got to work on payroll and.
Well, it's the fact that Lori does all the entry and prepares the statements.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah, she does all the entering, she does a lot of the transaction processing, and she reconciles all the accounts.
Right.
In an ideal world, the person that's doing payroll and the person that's doing accounts payable and all these other things would not be the one kind of finalizing the numbers at year end. There would be another check and balance to make sure that everything in those processes went correct and that your balance sheet accounts are correct.
Yeah, the one person just entered, the other person would run reports.
Yeah, and again, that's one that with a small staff is a challenge, to get rid of. But, I think I just told you that there was one audit adjustment. So I think you can have some level of comfort knowing that your records, are, pretty accurate. If we were coming here and reporting that I had 30 journal entries, I would say that this comment would be a higher priority because, if you're looking at reports throughout the year, reports you're trying to use to develop your budget, things like that, if there are a lot of journal entries, it kind of makes you wonder what you're looking at throughout the year. So because Lori's done a really nice job with the books, I think the urgency, I guess, of putting another check and balance, maybe isn't what it would be otherwise. And again, all of these, need to be considered on kind of a cost benefit, basis as well. So. Any other questions?
What's the treasurer's role in all this?
The board treasurer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The board's role in general is, oversight, setting policy, strategic direction, hiring and evaluating kind of your chief operating officer, who's the superintendent, and, evaluating him, making sure he's doing what you all are directing him to do, and to just general oversight. As far as your specific question on the role of the treasurer.
What, maybe I can help.
Okay.
Because this is a long conversation, and what I had originally proposed is to take, instead of having to, go over all these in 15 minutes, is to go in on a Friday or a Monday and sit down with our financial secretary and just go through those, another set of eyes. I've offered to have the bank statements mailed, come in, and then do a monthly reconciliation, so that there's another set of eyes so that we can improve our financial report. That was the main goal, is how do we get rid of material weaknesses and how to do our job better.
I think your idea about reviewing the bank statements, I don't see that. If you were to start doing that, I don't see that would impact any of these material weaknesses.
I don't want to do it.
Right, because the information, what I'm listing here, we're not listing anything about general disbursements. You're going through the disbursements, you're looking at the EFTs, which is a big area of risk. You're doing that, you have checks and balances in place. Brad is reviewing your bank reconciliation. So these items relate to a detailed review of payroll, which you really can't get enough information looking at a bank statement. You maybe can see the direct deposit out, but you can't see the details enough to provide a check and balance over that. So I think while that would be another set of eyes, that would not impact what we're reporting here for material weaknesses.
Well, the other thing we talked was that, and we're putting a lot on Brad's plate, and if that's what we're going to do, that's what we're going to do. And we talked earlier about Skyward, somebody else putting in the code so that any changes to payroll can be made, so that somebody else was in the room making sure that, because the changes to payroll are going to be annually at best. So, but I don't have to do that, and now we can get some accountability where, there's segregation of duties to get a better audit. Perfect.
Yeah, and I think doing that within management is really what we see. We don't see, other than I would say our very, very smallest organizations, where we have organizations that we audit that have one person who does everything. So in that case, it is more common for someone on the board to have a more active role and to look at bank recs and maybe get the unopened bank statement, and because there really is nobody else to provide checks and balances. But in a situation where you have hired a superintendent to oversee the day-to-day operations, if the control can be done at that level, I think that's certainly what we see in a normal practice. Unless there are reasons not to do that. Certainly, it's the board's duty if you think something is, gone awry, or there's serious, concerns about integrity, or any significant reason to question or to dig deeper. That's a whole different matter. But if everything is going as it should, typically we don't see the board getting involved in the day-to-day transactions.
On hiring, we hire you guys to prepare the financial statement. So we're hiring somebody. Couldn't we hire somebody else to get rid of the other material weakness?
You could, so that might, so I talked about the three that are done only at year end, so everything but those two payroll items. You could look into contracting with an accountant just to help oversee or help work with the year-end close process. That's something that you could look at. We've had some clients that have looked into having other accountants draft financial statements, and they have found that is not cost effective. I have no idea what it would cost to have somebody come in and kind of review the year-end information, and certainly you could contract that out, and we would consider that person to be like another employee of the district when we're looking at segregating duties and a check and balance. So that is something that I think could be effective, but it would certainly cost you something.
Well, okay, so you're saying it's gonna cost us more than having you guys prepare the financials? Because that was
Yeah,
the
because
other part.
you would bring in a third set of eyes,
Yeah.
Another
They're
firm.
gonna do regardless.
Yeah, well, and as far as us drafting the financial statement, all the information that we need to draft the financial statement comes from our audit procedures and all the documentation that we do as part of the audit. And if you brought someone in from the outside, I think it would in some ways duplicate some of that information, because we have to audit the numbers anyway, so we have them available to put into the financial statements. So I think it probably is a little more efficient. But certainly I have had, I had one client in particular actually did get a quote on what it would cost both to get another firm to draft the financial statements, and then what our fee would decrease. And they stopped right there because it was not cost effective for them, and they thought it would be one more firm to work with and have to learn their processes and their stuff. So, but certainly that would be an option.
Well, to try and do a clean slate to
Yeah.
get rid of all of them. I mean, that's a fair question.
I think if if you're looking for a couple of these to tackle to make the list better, I would say the payroll controls that we talked about, they're both, I think, relatively simple to implement. I don't think would take a lot of time, and the controls that we talked about are things that organizations do routinely. So those would be, I think, ones that would be the easiest to get rid of. These others are a little more challenging to get rid of and might require more resources.
And, because when we go back to the beginning, this is a regular part of most small organizations' financial
Absolutely.
statements. I get it, but, like Tom, if we started seeing red flags, if we started having audit finding things, that's, now that as we learn this and think, that's a thing in our pocket that we can bring in at any time. If we're so concerned. And I guess we decide, maybe we'll decide as the year goes on whether we want to implement something like that on a regular basis, whether it's worth however many dollars it is to bring somebody else in to pre-audit before the audit, basically.
Yeah,
That's what I'm hearing. Is that what I'm
that's-
hearing you say?
You need somebody to check everything over before it's audited, which I hear that's not the first time I've heard that comment, if you can believe that.
I would doubt it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And to go back to your comment about reviewing all the vouchers before the meeting and how there maybe isn't a lot of time, I guess I would say if any of you feel that that's not adequate time, I'm sure those would be available to look at in more depth if that's what, would make
Kim,
you
we
feel
always had an
comfortable.
audit or a committee by 2 people at least. And I've
Okay.
asked Kim Frank that same question. And 2 people come in at 6 o'clock to 6:30
Yeah,
to
yeah.
review.
That's a good
And-
idea.
And that's what we've done in the
Okay,
past.
yep, that's good.
Now, you recommend having 2 people? Because just having one go over them,
I would say it
We need
wouldn't
a
have
first
to
and
be
a
2
second in our
people.
motion.
We
That's how
always
that
like
comes
an extra
about.
person to
Yeah.
review the disbursements. probably could be one person, but two would be better,
Okay.
I guess. So I'll leave that up to your discretion. As long as somebody is looking at them, that's
And that has
the
been
key
the
thing,
practice,
so.
2 people have.
Yeah, and that's a good one.
That was one of our checks that's
Yeah.
been set up.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a standard control. We see that real commonly.
Who's on the committee?
It changes. It'll be the treasurer each time, but then another board member. And in past time, we've had it rotate through, and scheduled it actually. And let's say Brent was scheduled for tonight, and he couldn't make it, well, he'd call Pete and say, hey, can you be there? I'll take your place, whatever. So you schedule it. You would be there because as a treasurer every time. Again, that's the treasurer.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't be there, okay, 2 other people would be there. So.
And that's a good idea, I think, because it does allow for a little bit more in-depth look. And I know when boards try to look at something like during the meeting or right before the meeting, there is limited time. So to have a little bit extra time to look a little more closely, it would be better.
So what would you recommend? Because right now we're doing it at like a half hour before the meeting.
Yeah. And you're spending like that amount of time going through those?
If you run.
If you need it?
If you run, that's,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going through them, but it's just checking to
Okay.
make sure the numbers on the front match the numbers in the back. It's at a run.
I would say that you should take the time that you need to look at those invoices to feel comfortable. And, maybe, I don't know if a different scheduling or maybe if those are available at a different time. But I think certainly it's not a very good control if people are just glancing at something and signing off. So I think, we want to make sure that the adequate time is available to look at what you're approving.
Is that something we could have sent to us via email before this meeting? Vouchers?
That'd be quite a job, I would think. So we have to copy all those.
Yeah.
Scan them in, but I think a better fix would be instead of just having one person do it, just double up and do half.
Make sure that we have
Yeah.
2 people here.
That's the way we used to do it.
An hour would be fine, I would think.
For one person.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Do
Well,
you
well,
want to do it for an
it's-
hour?
It's hard to, if we did it, if they were available at 5:30, that would probably be just fine. Then anytime after 5:30, I'm willing to come in and
I think
go
I'd feel
through
more
it.
comfortable if we went back to the old way of doing it, where 2 of us would come in and cut it in half, and the superintendent probably doesn't want to be
Nope,
here
I
at
don't do that.
5:30.
I don't look, that's your job.
Well, I know you don't look, but you provide them, I mean.
Yeah. Make them available.
Yeah.
I'd prefer that it's just available a little bit quicker. so I can come in a
5:45,
little bit earlier.
whatever, we can work that out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need my handheld, but just a little bit of time to go through them at a decent pace instead of just having to race through them. 5:30 would be wonderful, I'd be willing to do that.
You want it by yourself, Tom?
Well, I have nothing to hide. If somebody else wants to come in,
I'm just asking.
that's fine. But if one is fine, if there's any questions, I will present it to the board. Like we had a bad number or something here before. I'll let the board know, and they'll direct that over to the board.
That doesn't hurt
If
my
I
feelings.
see anything that doesn't look right, then that's my job to report to the board. That's the end of my responsibility.
Well, I mean, if we had, there's 4 others of us to rotate through, I don't think, we could probably make that work to do that if we just set up a schedule like that. And I mean, like you said, if someone's missing, someone else, if they're able to cover, that seems like having 2 sets and go quicker. And I mean, another thing I would maybe ask is if there are anything that is out of the ordinary. Just, I don't know, I haven't looked through them, but if there's a narrative there on just kind of, what we're looking at, if it's something a little different than the norm, But, yeah.
I think it's prudent to take time and go through them, and I don't agree with doing half and half, because each one, the receipt tells the story of what went on for the past 2 weeks. So then everybody knows what's going on. Instead of just taking a little piece here and a little piece there. I mean, it's good. We get the report, which is new since I've been on the board, so we get the printed out report and just go through them. Our financial people do a fantastic job, so.
We've always printed the report, and it's always part of that bundle, so.
Well,
Okay.
what do we want to do? Should we set a schedule up then and team up on it?
Will these be available? Can we do that? Like just, if they're sitting here an hour before the meeting? Would that be fine?
That's up to you guys.
Just give us a little bit more time than a half an hour?
It's up to you guys.
Do we have any more questions?
I haven't
for
seen,
our-
I haven't seen the half-hour problem if you have two people here doing them.
Just running through them, so.
So,
Are we done? Do we have any more questions for our auditor? Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you very
Giving us
much.
Solutions. I like that.
So, if we had two people doing it, do we need to do it for an hour? Or is a half hour enough time?
45 minutes, 5:45, whatever your choices are.
Really, Tom?
So we have here at 5:30. I mean, I'm more than willing to do the heavy lifting of this. I just, 5:30, 5:45 in that area.
Whatever two people want to agree to be there at.
And
Doesn't
I'm
matter
not
to me.
requiring two, but I'm certainly, if somebody wants to come in, I'd make it voluntary. If one will suffice, because our financial people are already looking at them and preparing them. So just, would that suffice, one extra person? You-
Yeah, they're already reviewed
Right.
and approved before they get here, so I
Mhm.
would say one person
Sure.
would be fine.
That sounds
Just
fine.
Up to what everybody's comfortable with on board.
What do you want to do? Mr. Anderson?
Well, I've been making a habit of it, just I'm always the second pair of eyes, it seems like, over the past reason, just to catch stuff that Tom might not catch or whatever, it's although, I'm a little, I don't look at every line in the report like Tom does. But, I think it would be nice to have two of us to,
Okay.
whether
Dave, what do you
whether
think?
we're here at the same time, but as long as two eyes get looked at before we approve them.
I mean, if they're here at 5:30 and we come at 6 or 5:45, I mean, as long
Right.
as they're available at 5:30, that seems to be,
Yep.
you know,
That would be all I'm asking, just they're available. Then you guys come in whenever you can.
Okay.
that gives you some flexibility. I don't ever know what my schedule's gonna be, so.
Sure.
Okay, good enough then.
That'd be great.
All right, now we'll move on then to new business. Item C, consideration of a table motion. Mr. Lewandowski made a motion that was seconded by Mr. Wazorek to require the board treasurer to work directly with the district financial secretary and the district office secretary to complete the treasurer's duties mandated by the state statutes and the Clear Lake School Board policy.
Did we just cover that?
I think we did. I'm good. If we can make the changes that our auditor is recommending, I think that's good by me.
So are you willing to, I guess what we have, if we're all comfortable, then,
Well, we have a motion before us.
yeah, we have to, I don't know how to repeal a motion, or,
I don't
The
really.
person that made it would have to withdraw it, and the person that seconded it would have to agree.
That's what.
Okay. I'll withdraw the motion.
I'll agree.
Okay. All right, so that motion is no longer with us. So then we'll move on to new business, item D, consideration of direct access to bank accounts by president, clerk, and treasurer. So, how do we want to start the discussion on direct access?
The whole direct access thing was the first part. We've talked about this for quite a while, and was, if we can't work with the secretary, because a lot of it, we don't know what we're signing. And so that was the point of that. If we get more checks and balances to help clean up our audit, that was the whole driving thing behind all of this, is to get a better audit. So, I don't want, and if anybody says I want anybody's personal information, they're completely misleading people. I don't know how many hundred social security numbers I got from being an employer for 30 years. I've got a pile of them. They mean nothing to me. There was how many meetings ago, we said, okay, let's do the checks and balances with the W-2s, and it's right on there. We want the social security numbers redacted, which means taken off. Nobody here wants any of your personal information. We want checks and balances. That's supposed to be our job. So as far as, I don't want any direct access to anybody's routing numbers or social security numbers or anything like that, period. If we can clean up our audit, that's what we're trying to do. So that's leading the discussion. I don't.
And just from our discussion tonight, I don't see how I don't see how it would do anything to clean up our audit.
No.
Because if we wanted to have bank statements, we could just simply ask them to be delivered to the board meeting. If we want to have, that's our role as I see it. So.
I would concur.
Okay.
So now, consideration of direct access to bank accounts doesn't need to be considered anymore.
No longer an issue?
It's a moot point.
Okay.
Good point.
Okay.
It's not going to improve our audit, so why do it?
Yeah, right on. All right, and then we'll move on to new business E, WASB regional meeting attendance and reports, hopefully.
Did you bring your report, Dave?
Put Brent and Dave on the spot here, but if you remember, the WSB had the region meeting up at Heartland.
Yep.
Out of Trigo, Heartland Resort, and Dave and Brent went along with myself, and so kind of throwing those guys a curveball, just informed them on Friday that not a major report, but I guess just what all took place there, Dave, Brent, you guys can tag
I guess
team.
the best part of the meeting for me was to be sitting with other school board members and other school districts. Brad and I sat with Grantsburg. And just like, like we all did, what are you doing? We've got this. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? And a big discussion was Grantsburg was really interested in our before and after school program. They couldn't believe that we could get away with doing what we're doing. They couldn't. And you charge them for it too? Oh yeah. They were kind of awed by the program that we've got set up here, and then. And we elected a representative to the state board, re-elected a member of the state board, had a report from legal counsel as to what's going on in the state government, some of the things that are coming up in state government, and possible things that we may have to react to. Some Senate committees that are running around the state, holding hearings. Looking for input from the public. I know there's one in Eau Claire coming up here not too long from now, so if anybody wants to go down, there's a state senate hearing. There's a group of state senators running around looking for input on I think it's basically closing the gap, and it has to do a lot with urban schools. It seemed like to me that they're asking about. So.
Sounds like you paid attention.
I didn't fall asleep after dinner. What you were sitting with
St. Croix Falls.
St. Croix Falls.
Yep, we elected Stu Olson as our regional director. We talked about community leadership and our school board's role in that. They handed out a WASB guide for social media, use of social media, and how important that is nowadays. And one thing I noted was that any information provided through a district-sponsored social media account shall also be made available on the official district website. So we need to keep that as part of it. And I believe there's a board survey that was given to Brad that you're going to let us all be a part of. Executive Director John Ashley gave that to.
Yep, and that was part of, if you go back, what Greg was talking about back in May or so, the works of effective school boards. That was one segment. There's 5 different segments now to that, and they covered the one segment, the board's part of it, and that's what Dave's referring to. And so if you would do that, which I would recommend, is that's one part of it, and then the other 4 parts are part of the effective school board's evaluation. So.
And there was a survey that they handed out to you?
Yep. That was part, yeah.
Okay.
That was all part of it.
All right.
Yep.
But interesting to attend some of those meetings and just that where other area school board members are.
And I guess, whoops, that's the one thing that I would, when you talk, Brent, as far as when I go to conferences, in-services, things like that, I have the opportunity to sit next to other people and how do they do things? How are they? And I know we've talked about other school districts, whether they're exceeding at this. Well, how are they doing that? And so you get an opportunity to do those kinds of things. And so glad that Dave and Brent could attend and encourage the other board members to take those in too. So it was good.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to new business E. F. Review of October 1 equalized values.
Behind the auditors.
Take your shoes off.
And you got to keep going. There was a bunch of stuff for the two questions, C and E there, or D, that Greg had. But anyways, the audit report, you'll find a letter from the state of Wisconsin. We got our October 1st, 2015 evaluation, and if you recall back in when we did the annual meeting, I'm going to have you turn a couple, 3 pages, 3 more pages, and you can see the equalized valuation 2014, and we were expecting that number to be down about it's $192,551,580. We were expecting that to be down about $3 million, and got a pleasant surprise as far as the evaluation. You can see that the evaluation for all the majority, there's 2 of the townships or 2 of the municipalities that are going down slightly, but we go up to $200,660,317. So an increase of $8,108,737, or a 4.2% increase in the district, which, again, compared to what we were thinking before, is a good surprise and will help maintain our tax rate. Which one are you looking for, Dave?
It's in a ways, yeah.
Yep, it's quite a ways back there. So this is the first piece of the puzzle that we get as far as we're going to be setting our tax levy at the next board meeting in October, the final board meeting, our second board meeting in October. And so this is the first piece of the pie. Our student enrollment was one of them, our third Friday count. I should say that actually was the first piece that we knew, which with our enrollment going up slightly, with our evaluation going up slightly, things are coming in. Now the last thing will be is our state aid that we get on October 15th, and that one is still a crapshoot across the state because of all the vouchers and private school vouchers, etc. And so we won't know that one until October 15th, but that'll be the final piece, and we'll have a recommendation for the tax levy at the next board meeting. Questions on the evaluations?
Good news for our communities.
Thank all you folks who sold your house at a profit.
Now we'll move on to item G, approval of revenue limit exemption for energy efficiency.
And that's right here, Greg. We'll hand that one out. Each year we have to approve our revenue limit exemption. If you recall, with our building, we did an energy exemption for a large amount of money. And each year in the past, we've had to approve year by year. This year, the state allowed, or the state law changed, and so this is the whole amortization as far as all the way out to the payment of the energy exemption bond. So I'll read it. Be it resolved that the school district of Clear Lake is exercising its taxing authority under state statutes 121.94 40 Wisconsin statute to exceed the revenue limit on a non-recurrent basis by the amount of the district will spend on new energy efficiency measures and renewable energy efficiency products for the 2015-16 school year, and 20 years of debt for the term of the bond. That part is, again, the 20 years. We can do it now, and we won't be doing this again next year. And again, the state law changed to allow that this year. So the amount to be levied and expended is, and you see table below, the first couple numbers were what we did this last year or the year before, $220,500. 2014-15, 2,500. 15-16, 220,500. You see the numbers jump up then to 522,450. The reason that jumps up is the debt payment on the high school goes off, and so we, again, with Baird Financials, we created a payment system that was flat, so we didn't have people's taxes going up and then jumping back down. And so we're again, through all the presentations that we did, that was the plan. And so what this does then, it tells each payment for the next until 2033 that when the final exemption, energy exemption, would be requested. And so after the review of the recommendation report 66013-2B, the district has determined that $9,556,380 it would spend on energy efficiency projects recommended in the report is not likely to exceed the amount to be saved in the utility costs of $836,648 and non-utility costs $13,441,926 over the remaining 40-year useful life of the facility to which the measures apply. These are all things that, again, the new requirement to justify the 20-year, or putting all 20 years on one sheet or one approving. The board has entered into a 20-year performance contract under 660133 statute with Nexus Solutions for a project to implement the following energy efficiency measures or purchase energy efficient products and identify the following cost recovery performance indicators to measure energy savings and or operational savings for each bill, including the timeline for cost recovery. See attachment. The board shall annually perform an evaluation of the performance indicators and shall report to the electorate at an addendum in the required published budget summary document per 6590 Wisconsin statutes and in the school district's newsletter or in the published minutes of the school board meeting. The board shall use this evaluation to determine the amount of energy utility cost savings as a result of the project that shall be applied to the debt. And so again, what that we do that each year. At the end of the school year, it has to be published along with our annual report in the newspaper, and then also in our annual report to the taxpayers. So, again, what this is allowing us to do, rather than 1 year at a time, you put the whole schedule on. So, questions?
If, I know this is a small chance, but for some reason we come into a windfall, can we change it? Pay it off early?
You know, good question, Brent. We've got referendum also. If you remember, we did referendum, we did energy exemption.
Right.
Referendum, I believe we could. Energy exemption, I would have to find out.
Because it's being paid by its
yes,
savings.
by the savings. And so this is what you're going to tax for.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So.
When we agreed on that earlier, it was a set number.
Yeah.
It was a set number for the 20 years. Mm-hmm. Yep.
You're right.
So, other questions? Good question.
Okay, well then we'll move on to,
Oh, it needs approval.
oh,
Yep.
well,
I will move to accept these revenue limit exemption worksheet.
do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
It's been properly moved and seconded to approve the revenue limit exemption for energy efficiency. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Now we'll move on to H, consideration and approval of second semester youth options.
Yep. Right behind the tax levy information is a note from our high school counselor about youth options for spring semester 2016, and you can see that we have one student and the 4 classes that they are applying for, and you can see that Mrs. Kaler, I recommend we consider the applied communications at WITC for second semester. All these courses will help the student in their future coursework for dairy herd management diploma that they plan to attend or to pursue after high school. The next page is the actual form of the classes. And the student has followed the appropriate path and asking for approval, which as administration we would recommend to grant.
Sure. I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second? It's been properly moved and seconded that we approve the second semester youth options. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Could I ask a question to Brad? Why don't we have more students take advantage of that?
It has to fit into their schedule. They need to want to pick a path. We get more some year, and some years we get one or zero even. Mrs. Kaler works with students, and I mean, if that's a path that they would like to go after, we're willing to work with them as a district. So, and like I say, some years we'll get 4 or 5 of them, some years we'll get 1.
Does the district pick up all or part of that cost? Or how is that?
How it works, Pete, is if it's a class that the district doesn't offer, okay, we're going to approve it and we pick up the cost. Okay.
Okay. Yep. So similar to BSEO in
Yeah.
Minnesota. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on to item I, future agenda. Anybody have any things that you think we may want to visit about?
And I know you've got items that we've talked about in the past, and we'll keep bringing those back, so.
Right. As long as that was brought up again, that the board improvement tool that we talked about months and months ago.
That back in April.
Do we want to consider doing that now that we've gotten past all of the presentations and stuff that we've gone through?
I think we've got a lot on our plate selecting a new administrator right now, so.
I think you're right, Dave. I
Yeah.
think you got a good point there, is because you did a community survey, you did the focus groups, and so you have a feeling of what you're looking for. You have direction from and that's your biggest job. Your most important job is selecting the superintendent, and so I think I gotta agree with Dave, is you gotta
Yeah, we got
I
a
think
lot
focus on
of
that.
meetings
Some of the
coming
other
up
things, yeah, you've got a lot of interview meetings and things like that coming up, and so there'll be time to do that one. Don't drop it, because again, that's what we heard up at our conference on Tuesday night, last Tuesday, was that's an important tool to use, and so.
I think when we get the new guy in, that would be good to
Or gal.
revisit this, and then that job is done, then we can work with our new administrator and come up with a board goal and things like that, things we'd like to see improved and such like that, but I agree right now, we got plenty of things tied up.
Yep.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
All right, I'll move to adjourn. Nobody else wants to?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned.